What's going on, guys? Robert from Robert Was Here with a new video for you guys based on the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. And in this video, part 0, we will be addressing some common MBTI myths. So, MBTI is basically how you find your personality type. There's generally tests and profiles available online, and a lot of people just go to like the free tests or whatever, and that's what they think MBTI is, but it's a lot more than that. And hopefully in this video you'll start to recognize why it's more than that. And I'm going to start off by letting you know that MBTI is a business, and as such you're trying to make money. So keep that in mind when you go to the test, when we read the profiles, and etc., that they have made this into a business. So they're not going to give you the information that you want. They want you to keep paying more. And that's why you're probably getting some difficulties with finding your type. What people seem to forget is that MBTI is a business and they're trying to make money. So finding out people's personality types is a way to make some cash, especially if you go to companies and have their employees take it. Because then the employer has to pay for your instrument, and then the employers will also know where to place people for certain jobs. This is why you'll see some YouTube videos here on MBTI where they talk about careers, because that's the practical application for it. Now, as such, because there's money to be made, there's going to lead to competition, and there's a lot of MBTI imposters out there that are similar to the theory, but they're not MBTI. They just use the same 4-letter code, which leads to a lot of confusion. But they offer to sell you a simplified version of MBTI for a price, of course, because they're trying to get a piece of the pie. Now, if you go the route of getting professionally typed, it's fair. I was very critical of it prior to me being professionally typed, but professionals seeking compensation for their time is not much different than a teacher, professor, or tutor requesting compensation, because this stuff has a theory behind it, and these professionals, I'm hoping, have studied up on the theory so they can answer your questions. And this theory, as such, is not easy for everyone to just pick up and understand immediately. You can't understand it at a glance. However, that does not mean that it's impossible for a non-professional to understand the theory on a basic level. Now, let me just clarify. I am not a professional. I am not selling you anything. This is a hobby for me, and I'm just sharing that passion here. If you want to go advanced, then you're in the wrong place. Go get a professional and, pay them for their time. And you might be thinking, well, if I can't get advanced help, then why am I watching your crap? Well, this is because I'm here for basic help. And if you want to learn the basis for the theory, you are in the right place, and I will help you to get off of the quote-unquote wall, as I call it. This is because I'm not new to MBTI. I've been studying this since, like 2012? And I've made more than my fair share of mistakes over the years. And as such, when people are in the process of making mistakes, I am well aware of it, and I'm laughing on the inside because I made the same mistake starting off. Now, there are many MBTI imitators out there trying to get a piece of the pie, cutting to some of that profit. And they offer their own version of MBTI, which frequently causes people to hit the quote-unquote wall. There is this phenomenon within the MBTI community that I would like to call hitting the wall. This is what happens when you have a person new to MBTI trying to look up more information, and they might take multiple tests and start to get different results. They might read multiple profiles, and some of the profiles might contradict each other. And as they try to make sense of everything and double check sources and whatnot, they get more confused, and then they just get stuck. That is the quote-unquote wall. And of course, the purpose of my series is to take that wall and come in like a wrecking ball and be like, BAM! And then with that, help the new people to MBTI learn how to get around the wall so they can go try to discover their type. And this is because if you're hitting the wall, it's likely due that you have a poor foundation of the MBTI theory from a fundamental level, and you've strayed way off course. The purpose of this series is to lay the proper foundation for you so you can advance forward and hopefully find your type sooner or later. Now, there are some myths surrounding MBTI, and I'm hoping to dispel them so you can avoid making the same mistakes I made when I hit the wall, when I started delving deep into MBTI. And the first myth is the one letter off thing. I know you've heard it, you've probably thought it. It's like commonly you'll see this as INFJ versus INFP. You're going to see that a lot if you stick around within the MBTI community. And normally the person be like, I've taken multiple tests, I've read multiple online profiles, and I still don't know what type I am. Am I a P or am I a J? And then they go try to ask other people, and then they end up getting more confused. And eventually the person either, one, gives up and says MBTI is pseudoscience, is stupid, I don't like it, it's too complicated, I'm going to go to something else. Or they're gonna go with option two, start making crap up and not really respecting the theory. Now, for those people, they're making it more complicated than what it really is. This is because the main difference between INFJs and INFPs are their functions. If you know the theory, you'll know that the types have their four preferences, their four top functions. And if you look at INFJ and INFP, completely different functions. And this is because having one letter off can result in having completely different cognitive functions. And if you're an INFJ, you have FE, or extroverted feeling. And if you're an INFP, you have introverted feeling. And that's the difference between INFJs and INFPs that have countless threads, videos. There's even a website dedicated to it. And this is all they have to put on the page, and then people should get it. But they don't do that because they're trying to make money. So I can't knock them for doing that. But of course, if you stick to the theory, learn the difference between these two types is easy. Now, there are times where it's valid to be one letter off. And in this case, we'll use INFPs and ENFPs. And if you're one letter off from that, it's fine because you have the same functions, just in a, get this, different order. For INFPs, there are lead judges. So they have introverted feeling as their dominant function. And for ENFPs, they are lead perceivers, and they have extroverted intuition as their dominant function. But if you look at the auxiliary, extroverted intuition is next in the list for INFPs, and introverted feeling is next on the list for ENFPs. So they have the same functions. This is why if you're going to mix that up, it makes sense. And here are the other types that can go through that. And this is where you have the same cognitive functions, just in a slightly different order. Now, of course, if you're trying to jump from like INTJ or INTP and you're one letter off, it's not the same because, once again, you have different functions and in a different order. And here are the types that are one letter off, but they have completely different functions. And we're going to go ahead and try to address this other myth that you're going to hear since we were talking about P's and J's earlier. P's are messy / disorganized, while J's are neat and organized. It's another flaw of the letter system. And now here's what a perceiver and a judger is, according to the MBTI 3rd edition manual that I bought from my college. And you'll notice that thinking and feeling are your judging functions, and perceiving functions are your sensing and intuition. Now, the P types have dominant judging functions with these 4 types, despite being P types. They're actually lead judges, but they're seen as P's, if you will. And alternatively, here are some J types that are actually lead perceivers. And there are 8 other types that have this issue with the letters. So when you're speaking broad about like P's are messy and J's are neat, those 8 types are actually in reverse. So you'll have some J's actually be fit the stereotype of being messy, and you'll have some P's fit the stereotype of being neat. But you wouldn't know that unless you knew the theory. Otherwise, you'd be like, well, I can't be a J because I'm messy, or I can't be a P because I'm neat. Which is really just to say, whether you're messy or disorganized, like a quote-unquote J, or neat and organized like a quote-unquote P, should be treated on a case-by-case basis because it varies from individual to individual. That is like a broad stereotype for P's and J's. Sometimes it holds true, other times it doesn't. But I mean, imagine how silly it sounds now. It's like my room is clean, so I must be a J. And my friend who has a messy room, he's obviously a P because his room's always messy. Alright, myth number 3 is introverts are shy / quiet and extroverts are outgoing / loud. Now, of course, when you're in school, you're going to hear about evolution more likely than not. And when you're outside of school, you're also going to hear about evolution. And they're going to be the same words, but they're going to have different meanings. You know, in school, it's the evolution of mankind. And outside of school, it's the evolution of Pokemon. And of course, they give traits to extroverts where they're supposed to be like really talkative, like to be in the limelight, and they like to, they like to live as though they're the main character of their show, their own little show. And then you have introverts who don't like the limelight. They like to be alone. They really don't like talking that much. And of course, these are the social definitions for this. So if you're using that in MBTI as a gauge for whether you're an I or an E-type, then you're wrong, frankly. Because in MBTI, there's a definition change. And that is, of course, if you stick to the theory. So when you hear someone say, I can't be extrovert because I'm shy and I'm quiet and I love spending my time on the internet, well, that is a rookie mistake. I mean, it's so common that I'm going to have to explain this in another video altogether so you can fully get it. But pretty much, typing on letters alone is inaccurate as crap and questionable at best. So if you see someone typing on letters, they don't know much about MBTI. Now, whoa, I know what you're thinking. You're not wasting your time learning about MBTI. Because it's more than just a 4-letter code that you know it by. I mean, where you are right now with the 4-letter code is up here in red. And where the theory goes is here, under it. You see how much ice is there? Holy crap, there's a lot of stuff to go through. So you might be asking yourself, well, what is this original theory? So pretty much Carl Jung thought that there are 2 types of people, an introvert and an extrovert. And that they had, he's seen it as 2 different attitudes, or a readiness for the psyche to act or react in a certain way. With extroverts being prepared to engage their environment, and introverts being prepared to engage themselves. And as such, eventually, Carl Jung went on to develop functions, or cognitive functions, and he made some dichotomies between the perceiving functions and the judging functions. And pretty much he went from having 2 types with introvert and extrovert to 8 types with different functions, with preferences for sensing, thinking, intuition, and feeling. And then Myers and Briggs came along and they expanded on Jung's model by adding the auxiliary function, making the 8 types into 16 types that we know today. And that is pretty much the theory in a nutshell. And this is, of course, why you stick to the original theory, because there's where MBTI's backbone is. This is where you understand what your type is. So pretty much, pro tip, if Jung said it, it's likely to be true because he's the father of the theory. Also, another pro tip, if Myers and Briggs said it, it's very likely to be true because they directly expanded upon Jung's work. And even though I'm not a big fan of the test, and I'm very critical of their reliability, their contribution to MBTI is significant. And anything outside of that, you should take with a grain of salt. Be skeptical of it. Do not immediately think that it's true. And if it invalidates the original theory, then you have to reject it. I would recommend rejecting it. And if it fits within the theory, you can accept it. But remember, be cautious with that. Skepticism. So pretty much you have a bunch of newbies learning about MBTI and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to learn what my type is too. I'm going to go find a free online test. And instead of like researching the theory. And then pretty much they fall flat on their face. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've taken multiple tests and I keep getting different results. I read the profiles and I can relate to all of them. please help. What is my type? And to them, this is what I'm thinking. It's dangerous to go alone. You need to take the original theory with you. Otherwise, you're going to be going through a lot of crap. And I mean it. There's a lot of misinformation for MBTI. Like, there is a crap ton. Because these same preferences and Jung's terms and MBTI terms are also copied by the imitators. So it's going to confuse you. But these 4 letters aren't what make your type. It's your functional stacking. And here's a picture of the 16 types with their cognitive functions, which we'll go into way later. Unless you've already seen my last video. In which case, good for you, and double checking to make sure that everything makes sense to you. Now, I've been hinting at this, but here I'm going to go ahead and explain to you that every website that has MBTI-isk things is not the same MBTI. Similar to how in Street Fighter you have 3 characters that are named different names depending on the region there. And this makes things very confusing. So, MBTI, as you know, it is actually multiple theories using the same MBTI name, but are actually different theories. So pretty much all these theories are under the same MBTI roof. So when you search MBTI in Google, they lump them all together. And unless you're privy to the theory, you're gonna mix them together too, and it's gonna lead you to hit the wall. Now, like I said, there's a lot of MBTI imitators, and they're trying to get their piece of the pie. They're trying to get some money. So they're offering a simplified version of the MBTI to help you find your type. And that is the reality of the situation. I'm not making this up. This is taken from 16personalities.com. And you'll see clearly they say we define personality traits and types differently in our model. They're not using the same model as Jung and Myers and Briggs. They have their own separate model. And there you go. Read the highlighted portions and you'll see that 16's personalities has their own theory that is not MBTI. It's MBTI inspired, but it is not MBTI. And you can also check this by knowing the differences between .com and .org, because the Myers-Briggs Foundation is a .org site, and a lot of the results you get when you go to Google is going to be a .com. And I'm believing that the Myers-Briggs Foundation is the original, because that's actually how you go through the MBTI certification process, not just getting access to profiles. And there are a lot of other people that use something similar to the MBTI theory, but it is not the MBTI theory. So pretty much, you're going around saying, hey man, you know that boxer Balrog from Street Fighter? I love using that guy. While in Japan, and they're looking at you like, Balrog is not the boxer, M. Bison is the boxer. And you're like, no, Balrog is the boxer, man. And now you're confused, so it's not surprising. So when you get your test results, when you read the online profiles, descriptions, and traits associated with the type, what you have to remember is that while it looks like MBTI, it is potentially a different model altogether. And you have some people that are mixing theories together, such as the people that are like, I take my socionics test to find out what my MBTI type is. And to those people, you shouldn't really mix theories unless they complement each other. MBTI and socionics are 2 different theories. So using one to find the other it's a roundabout way to go on to find your type, and it's probably inaccurate as crap. And there are also times where it works, where let's say you take Enneagram and you apply that with MBTI and they complement each other. So now you have 16 types with like 9 subtypes. That can work with the theory. So the problem is that most time people are focused on the different theories about MBTI, the different models on the various websites that are trying to sell you something, instead of being focused on the foundation, cognitive functions, Jung's, Myers and Briggs. They don't know their work. They just know the stuff from the other websites. And this is why you have a poor foundation. You're going so far from the original theory that you're lost. You don't know what the heck's going on. And when people like myself and other YouTubers and other people on forums try to go correct this misinformation and misconception that has led through this confusion of having different theories with the same name, well, a lot of misinformation gets through. It spreads like wildfire because there are only so many people that are actually familiar with the original theory. And there are a lot more people that are just finding MBTI for the first time, and they go around spreading misinformation, misconceptions, and so on and so forth. So pretty much it's a losing battle, for the way I feel, because I used to try to type people on Personality Cafe to get this information out there. For every one person that I help, there's like 100 more creating a thread like, I don't know my type. And eventually, the stuff that they say is seen as truth. You say a lie loud enough and often enough, people will eventually take it as truth. So MBTI is really the blind leading the blind. The people who are fundamentally ignorant to the theory are the same ones that are making rules for the theory. And this is how you get to these stereotypes that I'm going to use for these memes. You have people that literally think if I act a certain way, I can become a different type. And it's like, no, that's not it. That goes against the theory. And they start to come up with these stereotypes for all the types, like S-types being stupid and shallow, N-types being smart and deep and complex. And pretty much that's how that stuff goes about. And whenever they do delve into the theory a little bit, they're like, no, this stuff doesn't make sense. This isn't what I'm looking for. I just want to know whether I'm an INFJ or an INFP. I don't want to know about functions. What are those? And if you ignore the original theory, you're going to get confused. But people do, and they wonder why. And I'm like, because you're not really focused on the theory that started. You're like looking at the sequel before looking at the prequel. Don't worry, you know these people. These are the ones that constantly question their type. Constantly. And they will like make all types of threads. Like, I don't know what type I am. It's like, dude, go look at the original theory. Put some thought into it. And then come at me or anybody on any of the websites dedicated to it. And then come with an argument for why you're a type. Or why you think you're not a type. Oh, and this is going to lead to the really big myth. That the tests are reliable as a way to find someone's MBTI type. Now, keep in mind that the tests are only as accurate as the individuals taking the test. So if a person's not taking the test accurately, then the results are going to be skewed. So it's only as reliable as the individuals taking it. Now, this would mean that sometimes the people taking the test are inaccurate, therefore they make the test invalid. And this is the case. Let's say you got an individual who answers a test like who they want to be instead of who they really are. That's gonna skew test results. And this is not even taken into factor like some of the cultural differences. Because like in the West, we're big on individualism. And in the East, they're big on collectivism. So their social norms, the stuff that's socially normal over there, they're going to answer for that. And they might not actually feel that way, but they answer that way because that's the way they're supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to answer. And that's going to skew results. So the tests, when you see the percentages, the statistics and all that, you have to take them with a grain of salt. You absolutely have to take them with a grain of salt because that could be the case for the numbers. So if the stats are flawed, then that means that the rarity amongst types is also potentially flawed. There is a widespread belief that N-types are rare and that there's not a lot of them. But honestly, from what I see, which is anecdotal evidence, mind you, I see more N-types than S-types in MBTI. Typically, whenever I talk to someone about MBTI, they're an N. It's possible that they're mistyped, of course, but they come off as N's, and there's not a lot of S-types within MBTI, which is, it's like this huge S versus N divide. Alright guys, I'm going to show you what I mean with the distribution of rarity and types amongst the population. Let's say that I went to some random country high school and did a poll on favorite music genre. And 73% of them said that their favorite music genre was, shocker, country. Now, my data would say 73% of high school students at X high school preferred country music. Notice it's specifically that high school, but what's going to happen is that it's going to get simplified. And it's going to become 7 out of 10 high school students prefer country music. And then some article is going to come along saying, new study finds that 7 out of 10 high school students prefer country music. And then people will believe this new stereotype based on science. See what happened there? In my fictitious example, now people are going to think high school kids love country music. And as such, the businesses are going to start pushing more country music out. And the sales are not going to go up. And they're going to wonder why. And for this example that I gave, why can't that be the case for MBTI? It's very much likely, and that's why you should be very careful when you start to talk about type rarity and distribution amongst the population. Because the sample size that they have could not represent the population as a whole. Just like that sample from that one high school I had in that one city will not be representative of all high schools in America. So why is there so much confusion when you come into MBTI? Well, it's because the people that don't know what they're talking about just happen to be talking the most. And boy, do they talk. These are the ones that spread the misinformation, the misconceptions, and so on and so forth. And they reinforce it as well. Sometimes even just making crap up. These are the ones that take the test, they run to YouTube like, hey, I just found out that I am a ESTP. So all ESTPs must do what I do. So this is what ESTPs do. Which sounds like it makes sense, but it doesn't. So finding people like that is kind of like finding a Pidgey in Pokemon. There are a crap ton of them. And for those of you who like MBTI, you want to find out more, you're going to keep running into them. And then when you say something, they're going to be like, oh wow, I didn't know that. And then you're going to become the information giver. And they're going to come to you with questions. And you're like, dude, I'm trying to find out my type, and you're asking me questions. And then you have people that are actually familiar with the theory, on various degrees, mind you. Not everyone's a master at the theory. Some people are just adequate at it enough to be aware of cognitive functions. And finding those people are like trying to find a Dratini. When you see them, it's like, oh man, I gotta follow this person because I want to see what they have to say. And when you're that person, this is pretty much what it feels like. The same questions keep coming up, the same thread, so on and so forth. And it's like, if you just do the basic research, you'll find it. And I'm going to actually go further to show you that I'm not just making this up. And I'm going to show you real life examples. When I did this, I went to Personality Cafe, I went to the Type Me forums, and I just clicked on a few random threads within the first 2 pages. So these are fresh. See, P versus J, you're going to see that a lot. Like look at this person. They're trying to find their type, and they have X at the end. They normally do that. I'm ISFX. The X represents what letter they're off, and they're trying to find it out. And this is where the whole P versus J, they try to do an individual letter thing, completely unaware that changing one letter can completely change your cognitive function stack. And what about this? We have a person who thinks that their type is changing. Yes, that their type is changing. They are originally INTJ, but now they can't see the future or the past, and they don't feel as though they're an INTJ anymore. And you'll read stuff like this. This will be out there. And you'll think that this person knows more than you, but they are fundamentally ignoring the theory once again. And this one. Oh, there is so much wrong with this little paragraph here. I'm going to have to actually break it down for you guys. Like, this is ridiculous how bad this is. Alright, so first sentence. So I have taken different MBTI tests multiple times and came out as ENFP, ESTP, ESFP, and INFP. Now, you're taking multiple tests and your results are all over the place. And this is because not all of them are the same MBTI. So pretty much for every different model that is based on MBTI, you have a different type. And that's confusing you. And that's funny already. And the next sentence, they go on to acknowledge cognitive function. So you think they know what they're talking about, like they know the theory. So then they go on to dismiss cognitive functions, very next sentence, because they obviously did not understand the theory of cognitive functions. It's hard to understand, granted. I'm not going to say this person is like dumb because they didn't get it. I didn't get it when I first read it, but they gave up on it. So they're going back to being a P or a J. and pretty much abandons cognitive functions altogether and goes back to where you first began, where you pick an introvert or extrovert, thinking or feeling. And pretty much like, I'm 50-50 on everything except P. So then you can tell that they've actually read, that they've done the time to read the various profiles, and they were trying to hope that that helped them find their type, but it didn't. Because it's from different theories. Different models based on MBTI, and you're looking for similarities. And like, they're all sound like me. I relate to all of them. And then they still don't know that the source of their confusion is coming because they are mixing so many different theories together, and they don't have a basic understanding of any of the theories. And when you mix theories and you're not good with the other ones, it's going to confuse you even more. To which case, you go to what is the best option, taking a test. So you rely on the test to give you your type, and you just you ignore the fundamental theory. This is like the perfect example of what happens in MBTI. This is the embodiment of what you'll see newbies do. And this is why you stick to the theory, because if you do not, you will be all over the place. Seriously. And this place I'm talking about will lead you directly to the wall. Face first. Epic face plant into the wall. Just bam! Because there's so much conflicting information from your test results, the profiles that you read. And yeah, just don't do what this guy did. Otherwise, man, you're gonna be finding your type for a very long time. So then we get to a whole subgenre of people that I like to call the test whisperers. And these guys are pretty much the people that lurk on forums, and they can't really explain a theory, but they can point you to the right test to give you your type. Because they took the test and that's how they found their type, which is kind of funny. And some of these guys, they just abandoned MBTI altogether and be like, man, forget MBTI. You need to go to socionics. It makes way more sense. Like, it's more accurate than this MBTI crap because I don't understand it. So is it any wonder that MBTI confuses people? Seriously, people, stop asking yourself whether I'm introverted or extroverted. Stop asking yourself whether I'm a P or a J. These are questions that will get you absolutely nowhere in MBTI. Instead, you need to go ahead and learn the original theory. Learn about cognitive functions. Learn about which functions you prefer. Start asking yourself, do I prefer introverted sensing or extroverted sensing? Ask yourself, do I prefer introverted intuition or extroverted intuition? Ask yourself, do I prefer introverted feeling or extroverted feeling? Start asking yourself, do I prefer introverted thinking or extroverted thinking? Start asking yourself, what is my dominant function? How do I use it in my everyday life? These are the questions that will eventually lead you to your MBTI type. The other ones will just lead you to the wall.